The third set is what I call the cost penalty of producing less than optimal plans. No country actually follows the optimum, and particularly countries like Pakistan, where there's incidence of poverty and there's a lot of pressure from the urban and the rural poor. There will be subsidies. There will be short-term policies to develop certain areas over others, and the optimal plan will be deviated from. But if we do not know the cost penalty of deviating from the optimal plans, we cannot make any informed judgments. And that's really what is happening. Subsidies aren't bad. There's nothing wrong with them, as long as they're targeted, they're affordable, they are means tested, and they in fact try to minimize the moral hazard which they could introduce. Integrated energy planning allows this to happen, and in such a case, the advantage of IEP is that it is also a short-term instrument. Maleeha asked me to introduce into the paper this issue called circular debt, and I resisted it in the beginning, I must say that, because it is such a ridiculous issue. It is entirely man-made, and but I think I bowed to her pressure, and she was quite right about this, because when I researched on this, it really became an issue which has been exaggerated and grown into proportions which I've never seen in any part of the world. And I have covered many parts of the world, working for a long time in the World Bank on the energy sector. Basically, it's an issue where revenues are insufficient to meet the cost of production. That's what it is. And therefore, there are payment arrears which compound themselves by loans which can't be repaid and so forth. So in the power sector, and there's only one part of the economy, it's the conversion part of the energy sector, you get entities which are the clients, which are the suppliers of both the input into these companies, that's energy input as well as materials and spare parts and so forth, which find themselves broke. That's what happens. Now, I won't go into the causes and what's propagated this. It's in the book.
And I'd like to explode this myth. We keep saying, oh, put in more capacity, put in more capacity. Well, here are the figures. I deliberately haven't given you too many figures here because, again, you go to the book for that. The installed capacity for power in Pakistan is about 20,000 megawatts. Our peak demand is 14,500 megawatts. That's a reserve which is a luxury very few countries have. And yet, because of circular debt and the endemic issues, we are only able to meet about 70% of our peak demand. Bottom line, we are utilizing less than 50% of our installed capacity. So, I hope that myth can be laid to rest. The issues themselves, the endemic issues, to my mind, are not being tackled enough. Now, these are difficult problems. They stem from the management of the sector, they stem from operational efficiencies, maintenance efficiency, from corruption, and from tariff collections. The losses are 25% to 30% of net generation, and most of these are what we call non-technical losses, which is a euphemism of theft. And as far as collection performance is concerned, at any given time, something like 30% of the bills remain uncollected. You can't expect entities to work under those conditions. Now, IEP is not unknown in Pakistan, and I would like to conclude by just bringing that up. In the 80s, as I mentioned in the beginning, this was introduced. Pakistan, by the way, has been known by the World Bank and other international agencies to be the forerunner, to be the front runner in many of the great reforms that have been taken in the developing world. But the rest of the developing world carries on with them. Pakistan seems to drop them. And that's where we really need to step up our, what I call the political will. In the early to middle 1980s, the Director General of Energy Resources there was a cell created there to do this work. Immediately after that, it was shifted to the Planning Division, which is a more central location. The administrative orders were issued, the budgets approved, everything was gung-ho, ready to go. And then, also, yes, by the way, the Energy Planning Board or a policy board was established for integration into the national plans. Excellent start. tremendous. You couldn't do better. However, the unraveling was inevitable, and because of lack of follow-through and the lack of the, instead of bringing in coordinated structures and shrinking the bureaucracy, it actually expanded, and the whole thing unraveled. The way you count it, but there must be at least 15 agencies now involved in policy decisions. And as I said earlier, I want them to talk to each other. So the conclusion is simple. The answer does lie in introducing integrated energy planning. With it, Pakistan can finally go beyond what needs to be done to how it can be done. The time to act is now, and with political will, this can be done much faster than the pessimists will have us believe. And on that will depend also the country.